Hello and welcome to another edition of Spotlight on Newcastle County, which features all things Newcastle County, Delaware. I'm your host, Melody Kitchen. You never know who we're going to talk to or where we're going to visit. For today's show, we are pleased to welcome to the NCC TV studio Recorder of Deeds Michael Kozikowski, County Executive Thomas P. Gordon, Assistant County Attorney Wilson Davis, and Common Interest Community Ombudsman Chris Curtin. We are putting the spotlight on how the executive, legislative, and administrative branches of government have worked together to pass legislation that benefits the common interest communities. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yes, thank you, Mel, for that introduction. It's always fun to host with the star of NCC TV. And to begin with, I want to ask you, County Executive Tom Gordon and Recorder of Deeds Mike Kozikowski, can you tell us what this ordinance that just got passed is all about? You know, and this is affecting all the civic organizations, you know, in Newcastle County. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Mike did the yeoman's work on this, and I would ask him to start off by explaining all the different facets of all the different groups that you had to get involved in this.
Well, thank you, Tom. Before I go into detail and explain the content of pretty much what the ordinance that was accomplished, I think this is a great opportunity for the county executive and I and county council. We also have here with us today the Ombudsman for the state of Delaware, Chris Curtin, and also the county attorney, Will Davis. And this is an opportunity for us to inform and educate the citizens of Newcastle County on not only how an idea, but how it comes to fruition, but also, more importantly, okay, how it benefits the community from an idea to where the three branches of government work together, and that's the executive branch, council, and your administrative branch, which are your row offices, and I'm your Recorder of Deeds. So by having all three branches of government working together and explaining and informing and letting people see this is how government works is, to me, a very important factor in what we can accomplish here. And utilizing NCTV as an educational tool.
Absolutely.
So here's our opportunity, Tom and panel, to go ahead and do our due diligence. Now, to address the very first question, the ordinance is 1604, and back on May 10th, County Council passed the ordinance where every single council member, George Smiley, sponsored the legislation, and every single council member co-sponsored the legislation because they see and realize just how important this ordinance is and what this ordinance creates. It gives the common interest community, which is made up of your maintenance corporations, condominium associations, and civic associations, the opportunity to record all their governing documents in a Recorder of Deeds office at no cost. And that's just the beginning. And that's why we're here today, not only to address this is the very first important step, but everyone here today is going to inform how this is going to be a complete waiver of fee, because there's also the state of Delaware fees that are involved, and also that how they can access these documents from the Recorder of Deeds website.
Now it's important because the civic associations and maintenance associations are small governments. And sometimes we've had people come in and pretend they are representing the community. And we have to have the ability to know who speaks for what civic association and what speaks for what maintenance associations for a whole variety of deals. And that's where Mike came in to say, let's make them register. But then there was the fee issue, which you waived. And as they operate as the local government to us, it's extremely important we know when they got elected, who they are. It was a legal election, and that's who we should be listening to for dues or for issues or sometimes major disputes between two different fractions you can explain some of that.
Well, Tom, as you know, you and I discussed this 2.5 months ago. We also realized the role that the Ombudsman has to play in the common interest communities to ensure that not only mediation and arbitration takes place, but also how we can create those consistencies. So as we move forward, pretty much what we've done with this ordinance by waiving the fee, now there's other actions that need to take place. And I believe that your questions, Melody and Tony, that you have for us today will pretty much convey that to the viewers.
So when will this begin? When will you begin making this public?
Well, actually, council, the county exec, I penned a letter that's going to come from the 3 branches of government that will be sent to the organizations in Newcastle County. And of course, informing them of the who, what, when, where, and why, and pretty much that this is the beginning and what we need to do in order to accomplish a full waiver.
Okay. Now, you said that this legislation pertains to all civic groups, so this is for big umbrella groups and civic groups. It's essentially for any council of civic organizations that exist in Newcastle County. Is that correct?
That is true, and I believe Wilson Davis, our county attorney, is going to give the viewers an opportunity to see just how much and how involved it is.
Right, Mr. Kozikowski and Mr. Gordon wanted this to be as inclusive and as expansive as possible so that we can benefit as many civic groups as possible in Newcastle County. And so we use the definition provided by state code, which is common interest community, and included also civic associations to that to the legislation in order to affect as many groups as possible. And I believe it's in the neighborhood of 1,000.
So it's a lot.
Groups. It's very expansive and it's going to benefit a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, Executive Gordon and Mr. Kozikowski, how long did it take to get buy-in, you know, from the executive branch, you know, represented by
It was
the
real
exec-
quick.
and the legislative?
It was about 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And I think it all came about, I guess it was about 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, that, you know, Chris informed me that, and of course, others wanted to know if we could, which is something we were going to be discussing a little bit later, and that is Kent County had put together a homeowners association portal, which is another segment that we were going to need to accomplish. But I saw it as, you know, we would have to definitely create ordinances to make change, but what would be the pivotal factor to create that trigger, okay, to make it become a reality? So I'd asked one of my staff in the library, in the Recorder of Deeds library, I gave him his name is Vince Ventresca. I gave him the list of the 1,017 maintenance corporations, civic associations, and condominium associations in Newcastle County. I said, randomly select 10 of the maintenance corporations, because they're the ones by law that are required to record their documents, where civic associations do not. But we wanted to include civic associations because why would they want to record their documents? Okay, and the reason for that is because it's going to create not only the necessary transparency, but also when you look at the election of your officers and civic associations.
Right, it's
and maintenance
essentially their
corporations.
history. They
Yeah,
can
so
go back and access
for future
it.
generations,
Right.
the documentation's there. So you're creating consistencies. So Vince went ahead and pulled the documents for me, of the governing documents, of 10 that he selected. And I reviewed them. And it really was a red flag. I couldn't believe, you know, with the fees that are incurred by local government and the state, a lot were not recording their documents.
Wow.
Because of the cost incurred. So that's set up the meeting with the county executive, and 2.5 months later, council passed the legislation May the 10th.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, Will, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned before common interest and common interest communities. Why is that term used for the
Well, we
civic
have
groups?
the benefit of having the common interest community ombudsman here today, and he has more expertise than I do, so I'll let him handle that
Do
question.
you mind?
Chris?
I'm not sure I understand the expertise part of it, but I can tell you that the Delaware Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act was passed by the state of Delaware and 23 other states. In Delaware, it was in 2009. and it defines common interest communities along the lines that Mike was just talking about. It essentially covers condominiums, cooperatives, and planned single-family home communities that all have a group of features in common. They all require that just by buying a property in a common interest community, unlike a civic association, you're automatically a member of the corporation or the association, since it could be any kind of any type of entity, except in Newcastle County where it has to be a corporation. But the other distinguishing feature that is different than civic associations is that there is a mandatory enforceable annual assessment for each property owner to pay their share of maintenance and improvement of common areas,
Sure, right.
such as roads, streetlights, parks. They can even be a lot in Sussex County are golf courses and swimming pools and clubhouses and the like. But those are a specialized type of community association, and many of the problems that common interest communities have, civic associations also have, and many of the problems revolve around a lack of knowledge by the governing bodies of what's in their bylaws. The bylaws, for example, answer lots of questions about how a community has to operate, and I've encountered both civic associations and homeowners associations that have either lost their bylaws or improperly recorded them or improperly amended them.
Wow. And Mike, and I'm tempted to call you by the new title Ben Janoka gave you, the recorder of good deeds himself. What kind of documents are we talking about here that civic groups need to record and that you're trying to get them to record for free?
Sure. As I had mentioned earlier, when I had requested one of my staff, Vince Fratresca, to retrieve these documents from the imaging retrieval system, they're made up of your bylaws, as Chris had mentioned, covenants, election of officers. We were very specific when we drafted the ordinance that we wanted to make sure we were very specific about which documents pertain to governing. There's also documents that we record in the Recorder of Deeds office when liens are placed. So that there is a fee that would be assessed because of fees that are owed by that property owner that hadn't paid their maintenance fees. So we excluded that portion, but we felt, the county executive and council and I felt that the governing documents were not only very important, but this was an opportunity for us to give back to the community.
Absolutely. Now, the ordinance, you said it's already been passed. I'm just wondering why you would still need to petition the Delaware General Assembly for legislation on the issue when it's already been passed.
Right.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah. Well, when I had mentioned this originally when we spoke to county executive, I and council, there is a $30 fee that the state has on every document recorded in the Recorder of Deeds office. $25 is part of housing, the Arts Access Fund, and of course Newcastle County gets to keep 50 cents of every document that we record because we collect it for the state. So that in itself, we need to, in order to have a full waiver, okay, of the governing fees assessed, the state would have to pass legislation.
Okay, I see.
And of course, Will has worked on actually putting together that draft, and with the review of the Ombudsman and others involved, we're going to move forward with that legislation probably next session, because we're at the very end of this session.
Sure.
Anything to add, Will?
You
No, I
wrote
think
the
this-
legislation for this. Do you want to give us a quick just rundown of exactly what it is?
Sure.
In layman's terms?
Sure. I mean, I'm hopeful that it's self-explanatory, because all good legislation should be self-explanatory. But the state permits county council to set recording fees by ordinance, and so if you look in county code, there's a whole set of dollar figures attached to each recording fee, each document that you're recording. And at the very end of this, we have this subsection that we're putting in, or we've put in already, which addresses exemptions for common interest communities and civic associations. And essentially sets forth the documents that are exempted from the recordation fee, as well as what types of community groups can take advantage of the legislation.
Absolutely.
Great. And, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, Tom, I know you have a lot of experience. Like, you were involved with CCOBH when you lived in Brandon 100. You were involved with GATA when you moved to Hockessin 30 years ago. When you think about, this legislation and your intimate involvement with civic associations, how important is this?
It's important for a lot of reasons, to have it documented. When someone wants to bring a trailer into their community and it's against the deed or it's against the maintenance, and you don't have it recorded and you have it enforced, it becomes a stopped. You can't do it. And this allows it to be. This will legitimize for civic associations their part, but for maintenance associations, it'll be much better to regulate their.
Excellent.
Their maintenance associations, what are they called, deed, or their articles of incorporation?
Right, governing
Yes.
documents,
Bylaws.
deed restrictions.
And that's the problem they get. They're not on file, they don't enforce it, and they didn't want to enforce it, and they run into a lot of, but it's great that we now have Chris on board that can come in and try to mediate some of these things. But he's got to start with saying this is a legitimate association that was duly elected, here are the officials. That's just the starting point for Chris, and I think it'll help him out a whole lot.
Excellent. And also wanted to ask, to follow up, we've got Chris here as well. And Mike, have you reached out to Kent and Sussex counties, to the south of us, just to see if you can get a kind of a unified voice when you go to the General Assembly?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, this is probably this statewide piece of legislation, will be the sixth piece of legislation I'll be involved in since I've been your recorder of deeds in 2002. And I used to be the vice president of the UAW CAP Council, which is the legislative arm for the United Auto Workers in the state of Delaware. So I like using legislation 101 in reverse, where you actually sit down with all the parties that the legislation is going to impact and hopefully build a consensus and take a clean bill down to Dover. I'm currently still the director or commissioner of the Delaware Electronic Recording Commission. We put together the requirements for all three counties for uniform standards under the state code. And it's very important, not only reaching out to your counterparts with Sussex and Kent, but we're also members of PRIA, which is the public records industry, the NACRC. So not only do I reach out to my counterparts in Sussex and Kent, but I'm also looking throughout the country and reaching out. Why reinvent the wheel? So the letter content, the ordinance, all that information has been CC'd to my counterparts in Sussex and Kent, but also how important it is for them to realize how we're moving forward with this, because that state ordinance stipulates, or that state piece of legislation stipulates, that the state fee will be waived based on the local government waiving their fee first, in which Newcastle County has already waived their fee. So I'm hoping that by time the next session starts and we move forward with introducing the state legislation, that Sussex and Kent will already have their ordinance moving forward and voted on for passage.
Well, and speaking of waiving the fee for the common interest groups, is this also going to waive the fee for those who want to access these files?
No, that's another hurdle.
Right.
Okay, and
Wow.
it's called the HOA portal, which Kent County has already implemented, and it's called the Homeowners Association portal. I've been in communication with the Information Systems Director in Kent County. The Ombudsman and I have a meeting in July with Sussex County Recorder of Deeds Council and also the executive branch of government and Sussex County to actually move forward to implement what Kent County has accomplished. And we'll have to create an ordinance to do just that, because for every document that's been it's in the image retrieval system. We have a fee that we assess our subscribers, our primary business organizations. We give them unlimited access to their documents for $100 a month. Now, if you're a light user and you want to access your documents from this site, it's $1 per page. So that will have to be waived, and not only that, we need to look at the content of what Kent County is offering, because there's the plats, okay, and other important documents that we need to make sure that's in our ordinance, so we have the uniformity throughout the state of Delaware. And that just makes our council members, okay, the ombudsman's job
Much easier, I'm sure.
much easier, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to ask the dumb question. Executive Gordon, you mentioned earlier.
You're going to ask me the dumb question?
No slight intended. You mentioned earlier, it didn't take long for you to buy into this when Mike came to your office and said, hey, listen, I think it's important to do this. Why is it important to make recording documents free for these civic groups?
First of all, we want them to cooperate, and they're not filing it now. So it certainly would make it more difficult if they got to pay for it. So by making it easy and transparent and then explaining to them, Chris can do that, the importance of it. I mean, they really are the first level of government. In some cases, these are large maintenance associations, and we have many, many of them. And sometimes their dues are higher than their taxes. And anything we can do to expedite their ability to organize and be more legal, we're going to do it. But it'd be a lot easier if they don't have to pay for it. And it helps us, so there's a benefit to the government.
And see, Tom sees it from the elected perspective, okay, because of what his responsibilities are. But I like to get Chris to respond to that too, because that's actually his job, okay? And he'll be able to really enlighten everyone just how beneficial this is.
The job of the ombudsman has, I guess, the three critically important procedures are, first, to educate people who live in common interest communities about their rights and responsibilities and the processes that are available to them under their governing documents. And the plat plan answers some questions about what is required to be in the community. Many that we're having trouble with now are having trouble because of the downturn in the economy, when developers were selling or declaring bankruptcy, so that the communities are incomplete. The plat plans are critical to determining what was required to be built. The declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or CC&Rs, it's where the deed restrictions are. And they're critical because they answer a lot of questions about rules and regulations about how the communities operate. Some of them say, most of them say, no farm animals, fences only 4 feet, no clotheslines. And people always dispute when if they don't know that that's something that they bought into, that they're required to comply with that or face.
So they're expected to
possible
pay a
fines.
fee to be a member of this civic or whatever it is, but then they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing or what they're paying into, really.
It's not a fee like a civic association. It's a mandatory annual assessment. It's like a tax.
Yeah.
And it's enforceable in court, and it's enforceable through applying liens to the property itself, or suing the people individually and personally in usually Justice of the Peace Court for fines or other to collect the assessments. But the bylaws are the next step in the governing documents, and they say who gets elected, how they get elected, how many people have to be present at a meeting for it to be legally effective, a quorum. And most people are not reading the governing documents before they buy. The Kiowa statute that was enacted in 2009 requires, after 2009, that a lot of this information be presented in a simplified fashion, a summary fashion. But still, people need to be aware that they should read these, because not every person is going to fit in every kind of community, but there's a community out there that pretty much anybody will be able to find comfort in. So it's the disputes, for the most part, that come to my office, I would say about 90% of them are resolved internally under a process created by my office under the statute for internal dispute resolution. And it requires that they read and cite and quote the bylaws, the declarations, and explain how that was violated. And if it wasn't violated, 90% of the
dismiss
time,
it, obviously, right?
90% of the time, that's the end of the dispute.
So this is a huge effort towards transparency, towards making people able to access the rules or bylaws that they're supposed to be living under, essentially. So this should have probably already been in place.
Well, and to give you a single example, deed restrictions, okay? For maintenance corporations and condominium associations, according to the state code, any amended by that group, because you have to take a vote, if you're going to amend a
Sure.
deed restriction, they're not valid unless recorded in a recorder deeds office. So even after that association passes it, it's
really not
necessary
official,
to have the
right?
documents to be recorded. And that is something that's not occurring. And so by moving forward with these actions, we're going to be able to create those consistencies.
You know, I want to ask about the HOA portal, but before I do, you mentioned these are like governmental entities. I like to call them quasi-governmental entities, and they're kind of like a vital liaison between, your, Newcastle County government and the communities that everyone lives in. Is that fair to say, and why this is important in the grand scheme of
And
things?
Chris could tell you more about that, but they are, these maintenance associations are very important. They're responsible for sometimes $1 million pond, and their fees to maintain the whole civic association sometimes is very contentious. So we need to do an educational program. But there are over 400 of them now. And it's very important that they realize that they know now they're paying somebody to help them. And usually those fees now are greater than they pay in property taxes. So it's becoming an issue on a lot of levels. But they sometimes enter into this not knowing that they're bound legally to pay this fee every year, which is not a fee, it's a tax almost. And we need to do better to educate them. We need to do better to make it legal. And I thank the Attorney General's office for dedicating a position to act as somebody that can come out and referee this, because we see more and more of these issues occurring in the future. And we've actually had one incident where a woman came in and claimed to be the representative of this maintenance association and was not. And so we need to go out to all of them and tell them that the things you're saying, that just because you had a meeting, you amended, it's not legal. And we got a lot of work to do because it's grown so fast.
And if it's free to file, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
And we got to make it easy for them. We got to talk about this portal and other things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you say, Mr. Gordon, it's like, these civic groups, they're generally following Robert's rules. So if anything's got to be amended, it's got to be done in the proper
Yeah,
fashion.
civics and you have maintenance associations, and two different things, but they all benefit from this. Civic associations, same thing, they'll have bylaws, and they don't enforce their bylaws. And all of a sudden, somebody wants to come in with a trailer, and they haven't enforced it over 40 years, they're going to have a
Then they
problem.
decide, right, you have to be able to prove that that was actually in the bylaws. If you can't find them, then you have a problem.
And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we wanted to emphasize to the citizens of Newcastle County that when government works together, we have the three branches of government, and that's why I want to make sure that this spotlight on Newcastle County actually depicts, okay, how that process works. County executive and I, we sat down, we discussed it, we got his departments involved. An ordinance was created, contacted some of the council members, was introduced at a committee meeting, a finance committee meeting, discussed there. Total buy-in at the committee meeting, presented at a council meeting. Of course, it has to, according to county code, that it has to be posted for 7 days, all the criteria that's going to be impacted, that's going to be discussed. And they vote on it. So that's the first part of the fact that we've accomplished the ordinance. Now the next thing is to convey to these organizations that are impacted by this important change.
Right.
So the next step in the process was to pen a letter that was sent out to the community, to those common interest communities, doing just that. Who, what, when, where, and why, what we need to do to accomplish full waiver. I'm waiting for the total buy-in. The county executive's already told me he liked the letter, even though he made some minor changes that definitely was, to me, very important, okay? Also, some of the council members have responded. And of course, once I have their input, everyone has given me move forward, then a
Right.
letter is going to be sent from all three branches of government to the 1,017 maintenance corporations, civic associations, and condominium associations in Newcastle County.
So hopefully what we want to, tell our audience and tell the people that would be filing is that this is intended to help you. This is intended to, help civic groups, even something like a new person being the turnover within the group. If they elect a new leader or have new members join, if they can't, look back and look at the bylaws or look at anything, how can you include a new member? So really, this is essentially going to help all of these people. So just take the time, file your stuff. It's free, and you're only helping yourself.
And see, and also, and I think everyone here at the table realizes that we're not doing this piecemeal. We see this 360.
Right.
We see the big picture. And in order to accomplish the big picture, we need to lay out a plan of action, and that's exactly what we've done. And we're making sure that we have everyone that it impacts involved as we move forward.
Absolutely.
So what exactly is the HOA portal? Sounds like some
Homeowners
technical.
Association.
Right.
And would we do that on our computer in the county?
Yes, matter of fact, I have from the IS department, John Yearley and Mark Schubert involved, Kim Cooch from Kent County. She is the director of their technology department in Kent. She provided me with the not only the website and accessing, but the password. I've reached out to my vendor, Recorder Deeds vendor, our software vendor, but I want to make sure I have everyone involved so we create the similarities, okay, that they've successfully created in Kent County, but more importantly, have this ready when council passes and the county exec signs the ordinance to go ahead and give the common interest communities, and that's the 360. The 360, record your documents, access your documents, and as Chris, the Ombudsman, had mentioned earlier, not only is it important for these organizations, but people that want to purchase in that development.
Right.
Now they'll be able to go right to the Recorder of Deeds website.
Agreed.
Just like they've done in Kent County. And he could explain to you how beneficial it has been since they've launched it in Kent.
The portal in Kent County started just by helping me. When I was getting complaints about communities, I searched their website and I found free access, free downloading, free printing of documents from plat plans through the declarations, through the bylaws of the communities that filed them. And it helped me answer a lot of questions that people living in communities have. Now I can refer them to them. In fact, Kent County and my website are linked to each other about I have a section of my website, do you live in Newcastle County, do you live in Kent County, do you live in Sussex County? And in Kent County, I link directly to that page. People go to it, they are told, type in this password and you'll be given access to the homeowners association documents that are on file in our county. And you can explore them and read them and download them and print them if you like, all for free.
Chris, how can they get a hold of you? Because I know there's a lot of communities that have these conflicts. How can they get a hold of you? And I'm sure you're going to be sorry I said that. But maybe we could put up on the screen
Sure.
Yeah.
contact information.
He
for
gave
them.
me
Do
his
you have
card.
an email that's on your website that they can contact you?
Yes,
on?
it's easy to find our website. Just Google or set your browser to the Delaware Attorney General's homepage. In the lower right-hand corner, there is a list of public resources, and lines 3 and 4 reference the Ombudsman and HOA, and that'll take you right to a whole bunch of information that's currently available online, including the process that's been created for dispute resolution, how to sign up for announcements about educational opportunities that my office has been presenting, and a host of other information, including some books about living in a common interest community.
There were a few communities that were being torn apart, and Chris came in and, you know, created a path forward so that they could all work together.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And I think, Tom, we can also create the link on your homepage,
Sure,
my homepage.
and we can put all that, we'll put it up.
And we'll have that pertinent information, especially when the portal's created. But we can do that now, and then it'll also be included with the portal.
Very good.
Okay.
So we're talking about, worthy change here, making the recording of documents free for civic groups and maintenance corporations. What is the next step in this whole process that you've undertaken here?
Well, the next step, of course, is for, the letter, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, and then, of course, once everyone's aware of the fact of what we're trying to accomplish, a full waiver, the next step is the state legislation.
Is there any chance we could get it this year?
That's a good question, Tom.
I
We
think,
don't know.
let's try.
We could, we could introduce it. I know that I had mentioned to the council members that I wanted to have a letter sent out by June the 21st, which is next week, and I was going to spend some time on the phone tomorrow to follow up on those council members that haven't responded. But I wanted to make sure I had total buy-in before I moved forward with the letter. I could reach out to Representative Brady, also on the Senate side, Senator Blevins, and to see if there's a possibility of that.
I think something like this, they would move on.
Well, to give you somewhat of an example, of course, we want to accomplish a full waiver, okay? But just to show you the impact and how, based on, because I know one of the questions I believe is there a cost? What's the cost to the county?
Right,
doing
fiscal
this?
impact.
So the fiscal note, if we speculated, because it's a guesstimate, if the 1017 maintenance corporations rush to the recorder of deeds to record their documents, let's say we based it on a maximum of 10 pages, okay? So you have the initial $13 a page, okay, fee. Then there's the $5 tech fee. Then if you multiply the 9 times 13, so I came up with, there's $165 that we're saving these organizations that would be in the local government cost.
Right.
Worst case scenario, if we don't get the state legislation passed, there will still be a $30 fee. But there's been a significant savings. But we're going to really strive for that continuous improvement, to have a full waiver. And that's why we're reaching out to the citizens of Newcastle County to see just not only how important this is, but the benefits it's going to give to the community as a whole.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming in today.
And I would like to thank everybody here, Will,
Absolutely.
and Mike, and Chris, and both
Thank
of
you.
you for putting this educational component out to the public. Thank you very much, and all the studio here.
Absolutely. I know it's going to be successful, and I know that a lot of people will be very grateful.
Our
that-
friends from Wilmington College are helping us today, and
Yes.
Yes.
Behind the cameras.
behind the
Right.
camera.
The interns have been doing a great job.
Alma mater.
Thank you for
I
letting
want
us
to
use
thank the
them.
Wilmington College for allowing them to upgrade our studio.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we're taking NCCTV to a new level, definitely.
And finally, Smiley, Councilman Smiley for getting the council on board, and all of council for doing it.
Yes.
And John Cartier could not be with us today.
Let's
so
mention
I want to make sure that
Councilman Cartier as well.
John.
that he gets recognized too.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Spotlight on Newcastle County. Hope you enjoyed today's show about the ongoing push to make it easier for civic groups to record their important documents. On behalf of County Executive Thomas P. Gordon, I want to thank you for watching NCC TV, your source for local news and information on Newcastle County, Delaware. For Tony Prado and all the NCC TV crew, this is Melody Kitchen. Thank you again for watching. Take care.